Rich men and their rockets. Who's your favorite billionaire, Paul Vallis? Wait, I think your microphone's not on.
Yep.
Yes,
yeah,
now
no,
it's on. Okay.
Branson.
Richard Branson?
Yeah, I mean, his plane landed. He took the plane up, and then the plane landed like a normal plane. He didn't go up into the rocket, touch the sky, get like 5 seconds of zero gravity.
And then parachute back down.
I mean, if they wanted to do that, you know how they filmed those gravity scenes, those zero gravity scenes in like Apollo, the Tom Hanks movie, Apollo 13, is they go up in this like big plane. And then the plane dives, and when the plane dives, it creates the
feeling of zero gravity.
Feeling of zero gravity. So when you saw Tom Hanks like floating through the command module or whatever it was, they're actually in this big cargo plane, and they're diving.
Okay.
So he could have done that. It's a lot cheaper if they wanted to do zero gravity.
Well, Jeff Bezos, you made history again, only though Richard Branson made it first.
Yeah,
it was
he
a
beat
race
you,
to
buddy.
Rich men and rockets.
And he's a poor billionaire.
He is. But you know what? He wants to thank you and thank us. Well, no, thank you.
You mean his minimum wage
Jeff
workers?
Bezos.
What you see is it's actually, I want to thank every Amazon employee and every Amazon customer because you guys paid for all of this.
What a tone-deaf victory lap that he made yesterday.
We paid so that he could get a few seconds of zero gravity.
Yeah, well, one person, and, he was being ridiculed on, you guys paid for all this. I'd like a refund. People are tweeting out, I want my money back. I'm not going to use Amazon again. Okay, good luck.
Yeah, right.
But one person that he took up to space with him, or I don't even know if you consider it space, but Wally Funk, 82-year-old woman who got passed up because back then women could not be astronauts, but she finally got to get to the top.
And I want to thank you, sweetheart, because you made it possible for me. I've been waiting a long time to finally get it up there.
Oh, she got it up there, let me tell you. And while they were up there, they looked at the Earth's atmosphere.
What you see is it's actually incredibly thin. It's this tiny little fragile thing. And as we move about the planet, we're damaging it.
With more on that, now Jeff Bezos is going to be a climatologist.
Yes, he is.
All right, with more on this, and he has a new book. We welcome to the program Ryan Walters, independent historian, teacher at Collin College, and author of Apollo 1, The Tragedy That Put Us on the Moon. Good morning, Mr. Walters. How are you?
I'm doing great. How are y'all doing this morning?
Good. So did you watch Richard Branson, and did you watch Jeff Bezos' Blue Origin yesterday?
Of course, I did. I was insanely jealous, but I watched it. Pretty thrilling.
So what are they trying to accomplish, though, besides, rich men and their rockets? Is there a purpose to this?
I think that's one point. I mean, rich men and their rockets. I mean, it's a billionaire's space race is what we're going through. It's not like the 60s where it was between the United States and the Soviet Union. We've got billionaires now competing for space, but I mean, I think they're legitimately trying to build a space tourism industry, and I don't know how successful they'll be. I would certainly like to climb on one of those machines, but right now I think the ticket's pretty it's pretty high. I think what some of the opening bids have been in the millions of dollars. I'm just a little bit short of that.
Yeah, me too. I'll spot you.
Yeah. Like all of it. I mean, I need to like all of it, but
well, the youngest
one day
the youngest kid on the youngest kid on the Blue Origin was 18 years old, and his father, who's a billionaire in the Netherlands, paid $28 million for his son to go up in space, to make history, to be the youngest. Now, do you consider them really like going up into space? Did they deserve their wings?
The original astronauts would have said no. Of course, what they did yesterday, the Bezos mission, was a suborbital. The first two missions we had in the early days of the Mercury program were just like that, suborbitals. They just went up and came back down because in those days we didn't have a rocket strong enough to put them in orbit, or at least one that didn't blow up a lot. And those guys, in the early days, Alan Shepard, Gus Grissom, those guys trained relentlessly and did all that. And that kind of shows you where we are today. I mean, look how far we've come in terms of knowledge and technology. I guess that's one positive aspect to look at. None of these guys yesterday, I mean, Wally Funk was a pilot, but Bezos had zero training. He didn't know what he was doing.
Yeah, all those.
So he went up and did essentially what Alan Shepard and Gus Grissom did in 1961 after years and years of training and tests and, psychological evaluations and all those things.
Do you think hindsight being 2020, do you think they needed all that training just to basically go up there and come straight down?
Now, we know that now that they really didn't. Particularly the Mercury program. The Mercury program, our original program just to get a man in space, orbit the Earth, was extraordinarily primitive by today's standards. We look back on it just to do that. No, not really. But you got to remember, we didn't know anything about space or space travel. And they wanted, not only did they want military pilots, they had to be military test pilots.
That's
and all of these qualifications. And then, of course, they went through all these crazy medical and psychological evaluations that were just ridiculous. But that just goes to show you the level of ignorance in those days. I don't mean that in an ugly way. I just mean we really just didn't know what we were doing. And these guys that's why they were test pilots. We were testing a lot of things. Not just the spacecraft, but the spacesuits and everything. So they were really truly pioneers. Today, we don't. You don't really need any of that. I mean, Richard Branson, he didn't have any astronaut training.
No.
These guys did.
But I'd much rather take that plane because it had a pilot flying it rather than Bezos yesterday. How did that work? How did they get back into the atmosphere? They just deployed 4 parachutes?
Suborbital. Well, yeah, it just the capsule just detached and it parachuted back down. To get into orbit, you have to get it's not height, it's speed. You have to get 17,500 miles an hour to get into orbit.
Wow.
They didn't get to that speed, so they just went up and had a nice 10-minute view of the Earth and floated around and came back down, just parachuted back down.
Do you still need the shields for reentry that you would need if you were in a what's referred to as a post-orbital flight? I mean, do you still need the same reentry protection?
Oh yeah, I mean, it's gonna. You can if you notice the capsule when it landed, it had some scorches on it, just like the SpaceX capsule. I mean, it's going to because you're in a very at least I don't know exactly the altitude they were. I think only about 60 miles, but that's still. I think space is considered about 52 miles up, so. You're coming back down in ever thickening air. It's getting thicker and thicker the closer you get to the ground. So that's what's causing the friction. So you have to have the heat shield, or you're not going to last a few seconds.
Now, Branson's vehicle was a reentry vehicle that landed. Did that have the type of reentry protection that the space shuttle had? Those tiles.
I'm sure it did. Yeah, the tiles. Yeah, I'm sure it had the same type tiles. So yeah, and that's what people need to understand. And I hope we don't get the Titanic attitude with this, that this is unsinkable. This is still dangerous. I mean, that rocket could blow up. If you have, like talking about the tiles, 1 or 2 of those tiles get knocked off or fall off. That's what happened to Columbia.
Right.
Well, that's not what happened. It had a damaged wing. But if you lose some of those tiles in appropriate places, I mean, you can burn up. It's still a dangerous thing, and they got a lot of work to do, I think, before people are doing that as a matter of routine.
And Blue Origin, he'd sent up 15 tests. They did 15 different tests on the rocket. And did they have any accidents? I remember one.
Yeah, you're always going to have that. I mean, you get that type of technology, that many moving parts. I mean, all it takes is one to fail, and you're going to have a problem. Of course, that is interesting that he tested it so many times. I mean, he's not like the old guys that tested it 1 or 2 times and then climbed up in it. Remember the first space shuttle in 1981? We didn't test it at all.
Oh, that's right. Oh gosh.
We didn't. We tested the components, but as far as putting it all together and flying it, there was no way to test it. We had to just put 2 guys in it, John Young and Bob Crippen, and say, "Okay, take off and let's see what happens."
Yeah. And Mr. Walters, let's quickly talk about your book, Apollo 1, The Tragedy That Put Us on the Moon. So the Apollo disaster occurred more than 50 years ago. Wow. And how is that tragedy still resonating today?
Well, the premise of my book is we would not have made it to the moon before Kennedy's deadline. It hadn't been for Apollo 1. the tragedy, because that the Apollo program had gotten off the ground, and we were trying to fly the first mission, and the spacecraft just wasn't very good. There were a lot of mistakes and a lot of problems. The fire that killed the crew, Gus Grissom, Ed White, and Roger Chaffee, sort of exposed what was wrong with the program, and we were able to fix that and get back on the path to the moon. Of course, my position is I don't think we would have made the moon at all without the tragedy. There was a lot of public opposition to it. Most people don't realize that. Not everybody in the country was for Apollo, and by the time we got to the Apollo moon program, there was considerable opposition because of the level of money we were spending, which was about 5% of the federal budget at the time. If we'd had a disaster in space, for example, if there had been a fire explosion in space, lost a crew, I think that might have been enough to end the program. So it was a tragedy that had a silver lining to it.
Yeah, quick question. As a big movie fan, what is the best movie, the most authentic movie on the space program? You know, like First Man, Apollo 13, or The Right Stuff. In your opinion,
I'm not a big fan of The Right Stuff because of how they portrayed Gus Grissom in that particular. And I talk about that in the book. I'm actually in Mitchell, Indiana today at Gus Grissom's hometown. I'm doing a book signing there at an event here. And I just think he was treated pretty shabbily by Tom Wolfe's book and by the movie. But I like Apollo 13. You were talking about the plane they put the set in, the famed Vomit Comet, they call it. That's what made that very authentic. I mean, if they had tried to do that on the ground and use different techniques, it probably would have been a disaster. And I do like First Man. Talking about the Apollo 1 fire, that's the best portrayal of the Apollo 1 fire is First Man.
Yeah. All right.
Very good.
All right. Thanks, Ryan Walters, independent historian, teacher at Collin College, author of Apollo 1, the tragedy that put us on the moon. Thank you so much for making time for us this morning.
Thank you so much. I enjoyed it.
All right. And he joined us on our turnkey.pro answer line.
You've made the switch, and it feels so good. You've switched to Chicago's Morning Answer on AM 560. The Answer.
The Lou Dobbs Financial Report is brought to you by Signature Bank, helping local businesses succeed. Visit signaturebank.bank for your commercial banking needs.
I'm Keith Peters in for Lou Dobbs. Tokyo Olympics might still be canceled. Hospital chain sees profits skyrocket, and British cinema chain fined $1 million. Those stories next.
If you're like me, towels just didn't seem to dry anymore when you were in the store. They felt smooth and soft, but at home they just didn't absorb very well. That was before Mike Lindell found the best towel company right here in the USA. Just go to MyPillow.com and enter my promo code DOBBS for deep discounts on these soft, thirsty towels that actually work. They're made with USA cotton. They come with a full 60-day money-back guarantee. A 6-piece set of these soft MyPillow products includes 2 bath towels, 2 hand towels, and 2 washcloths in your choice of beautiful colors. Regularly $109.99. Now $39.99 when you enter my promo code DOBBS. Just go to MyPillow.com, click on the new radio listener specials, and enter my promo code DOBBS for deep discounts, or call 800-977-9152 and tell them Lou Dobbs sent you.
The chief of the Tokyo 2020 Organizing Committee says he has not yet ruled out canceling the Olympics in advance of opening ceremonies this Friday. More athletes have recently tested positive for COVID. The nation's largest publicly traded hospital chain, HCA Healthcare, says its quarterly profits soared in the second quarter. HCA says patients returned to its operating tables and hospital rooms after staying home throughout most of 2020.